Hello and welcome to video 3 in my Modelling in Maya series. We have the scene set up, plus we have some basic lighting, and we also have an improved shader which we can use when sending screenshots to our clients. So in this video we will start modelling, and the first stage is to block out the basic female form. Now we won't be focusing on any details at this stage. Instead, we just want the foundations which we can gradually build upon. One thing I do want to mention is that throughout this course I will be speeding up some of the recordings. Just this section alone would be around 2 hours long, so this would make the video very boring for you to watch. Instead, I will try and focus on key areas and techniques so you are still fully able to follow along. If you are unsure about anything, please let me know either here or over at the antCGi Discord community. So I have a really quick question. How would you like to help support the future of this channel and help to keep these videos free? Well, there are a few options. One would be to simply treat me to a coffee at my coffee page as a quick and easy thank you. You could also grab something from the antCGi store, or one of my other online stores like CubeBrush and Gumroad. This is where you will also find the course files that go with this course, so you can download them and follow along. However, for as little as 99p a month, you could join the antCGi Club. There are a few ways you can join. You could head over to my Patreon or my coffee pages, or alternatively simply hit that join button below this video. In short, the more support I get, the more time I can dedicate to creating more high quality content just for you. To get more information on how you can help, follow the link on the screen or in the description below. Okay, now that's out of the way, let's get on with the video. Now before you start to do any work in Maya, I would highly suggest you enable the autosave feature. I'll admit, at this stage and with a fresh install of Maya, I forgot and ended up losing a few hours work due to crashes, so I would say it's an important step. Go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Preferences. Then go down to Files, Projects. Here you will find the autosave section. Make sure this is enabled and also limit the amount of saves to 10. This will mean there are only ever 10 saves for this project at one time, and Maya will automatically overwrite the older files. If you don't add a limit, your hard drive will slowly fill up with files. Next, set the interval to something like 10 minutes. I can live with losing 10 minutes of work, plus you don't want Maya saving every minute. If your file size starts to get quite large, you may want to change this, especially if it's taking 30 seconds to save each time. This will really cut into the flow of your work. Finally, I prefer to dump all my autosaves into a single folder, so it's easier to find them. By default, Maya will put them into the current project, and if you're like me, you may forget to change the Maya project from time to time, so you will end up with autosaves dotted all over your hard drive. This simplifies things. Plus, if you need to claw back some hard drive space, you can easily delete the contents of this folder. One other thing I would recommend is having lots of reference handy. I have these two work colleagues that I use from time to time. They sit in my office judging me as I work. I got these from 3D Total, and they also have a great deal of other models and books which have helped me over the years, like this one, Anatomy for 3D Artists. Another great resource are the Anatomy for Sculptors books. Now I don't own these yet, but they have been on my must-buy list for a while. Now none of these are sponsored mentions, so I haven't been given them for free and asked to mention them. They are basically just what I use and what I intend on using in the future. To be honest though, a good old Google search can usually bring up some good images to refer to as well. Now to help display all this reference that you've gathered, there are a couple of apps that I use. Quadro and PureRef are my favourites as they allow you to build up a mood board of images to refer to quickly and easily. You can then store these and then load them in really quickly so you don't keep having to position images around your screen. I would suggest you check out both to see what fits with your particular workflow. Now these are both free, although PureRef does ask that you give a donation towards its development. So what I would suggest is maybe check out both and see what works best with your particular workflow. Okay, so we have our scene here with the model sheets added, so we can work on top of them. As mentioned earlier, we will be using a variation of the box modelling technique to create this base mesh. So to start us off, we need a few primitive objects. First, let's create a cylinder. We could use the Create menu, but let's use the Polygon modelling shelf to make things easier. Here is the cylinder icon. If we click once, Maya will create a cylinder based off the default settings, or the previously used settings. We can also double-click to open the options. Change axis divisions to 12 and height divisions to 8. Let's create that. Now set axis divisions to 8 and height divisions to 6. And create another cylinder. So those will act as her torso and arm. So now we need to add another primitive for her chest. Let's use a sphere. We need to simplify this, so set both axis and height divisions to 6. And create that. Okay, those are done, so let's make them bigger so we can see them. Let's also assign our clay material to them too. So right click to bring up the marking menu and go down to Assign Existing Material, Clay Matte. Done. Now that looks better. Now let's reshape these to form the basic shapes. Switch to the front view and move the first cylinder up and scale it so it's roughly the size of her torso. With the second cylinder, repeat this but adjust it to fit her left arm. Just a basic fit for now. Let's move that sphere over for now. The torso cylinder needs to cover her whole torso. That's better. Let's switch to the side view now and enable hardware texturing so we can see our shader. Just move this forward a touch. Okay, we now want to change the shape of this cylinder. First, let's hide the other primitives. So select them and press H. Ideally, I need to be able to see the model sheet as I work. So go to the shading menu and enable X-ray so we can see through the model. That's better. Okay, right click on the cylinder and select Vertex. We now want to work our way down, scaling and translating the vertices to match the torso shape. So something like this will do. Now switch to the front view and repeat the process. Turn on X-ray again so we can see the model sheet, and then adjust the vertices. Feel free to also move each edge loop vertically too if you need. Okay, there we have the basic torso shape. Let's work on the arm next. So make the other cylinder visible again. Just select it in the outliner and press Shift and H. Now adjust each edge loop to get the rough shape of the arm. Focus on one view and then switch to the other. Let's check this from the front again. Okay. So now we have the torso and the arm. Let's bring back the sphere now. And we need to rotate it so the top is pointing forwards. I can hold down J and this will snap the rotation to specific angles. Let me bring over the tool window to show you. Here is the rotate tool window. If I hold down J, you will see that the step snap option here switches from off to absolute. And what this is doing is limiting the rotation to this value of 15 here. I can change this to 90, and the sphere will snap to each 90-degree orientation. So that can be useful when needing more precise rotations. Okay, so now this is pointing forwards, we can adjust its size and position. Let's look at it from the front view first. Move it over her left breast. I'm going to rotate it first so we have an edge loop running vertically from top to bottom. This will help when we come to combine this with the torso model. And let's adjust the size too. OK, switch to the side view. Move this forward. And I want to rotate it now, but the axis is wrong for what I need. So I want to change the manipulator so it's orientated with the world axis. I can do this quickly. Just hold down Ctrl and Shift to bring up the marking menu. And select World. You see the manipulator is aligned with the viewport now, rather than with the model's orientation. If I switch back to Object, it's now matching the object's orientation, so it's tilted backwards because we rotated the sphere earlier. I could also freeze the transforms to fix this, but I don't want to do that just yet. Let's switch back to World and simply tilt the sphere so it's pointing up slightly. Now switch to the front view and rotate it so it's pointing out too. You need to imagine the pole at the front is where the nipple would be, and breasts tend to follow the curvature of the torso, so they are orientated away from the centre, not pointing dead ahead. OK, so there we have the three main shapes. We do need one more though for her leg, so let's create another cylinder. And let's just use the same settings we used for her arm, although we may want this to be a slightly higher density model, but let's leave it for now, we can always add in edge loops later. Let's scale this up and assign the shader. Now we simply adjust this to fit the basic shape of her leg. Use her knee as the pivot point initially. I'll make this a bit higher so it's where the actual crease at the back of her knee is. And now the side view. OK, so that's the basic shapes in. Let's soften the normals now. So as we saw in the first video, all we need to do is select the models, hold Shift and right click to bring up the marking menu, and then go to Soften Harden Edges, Soften Edges. OK, there we go. Very basic, but this will give us the foundations we need to build this base mesh. So now let's start to combine these so they form a single seamless model. So first I'm going to remove the caps from each of the cylinders. So simply right click on a model and switch to Face Editing mode. Select the top faces, and to remove these here we can just hold Ctrl, which will remove things from the current selection, and simply press Delete. Now remove the lower cap and repeat for the arm and the leg cylinders. If you look over in the channel box, you will see we are starting to get a build-up of modelling history down here. Now this isn't a lot, but over time this can increase and sometimes cause Maya to crash, so it's good practice to delete the history as you work. Now deleting the history actually bakes it into the model, it doesn't remove it. So you keep it, but it cleans up the scene. To do this, we can select the models and go to Delete by Type, History. You can also use the Delete All by Type option here, and that will work through everything in the scene. This can be a little dangerous though, because there are times when you need the history in order for other systems and deformers to work. OK, that's done. We can also clean up the translations too while we're here. To do this, we go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. Here you can specify what you want to freeze. We want to do everything, so click Freeze Transforms. Those are now all cleaned and back to default values. So the next step is to start combining these models and reworking the topology to blend them into each other. Let's add the chest to the torso first. Before we can work on them, we need to make them a single model, rather than two separate ones. So select them, and then holding Shift, right click, and go down to Combine. You see, we now have a new model called Cylinder 4. The main cylinder and sphere have now turned into groups, with transform nodes hidden inside them. This is part of Maya maintaining the history of that combine action, just in case we need to edit it or change it. You can see it over here, polyunite 1, which is the combination of the models. It does clog up the scene though, and at this stage we don't need any of these, so let's quickly delete the history to get rid of those. So those groups have gone now, and we're left with a single model. Okay, how do we blend these? Well, we ideally need a hole in the torso where the sphere is going to be. Let's add an edge loop running down the model here, so we have more topology to work with. Select the top edge, and holding Shift, double-click on the edge below it to select the whole edge ring. Now hold Shift and right-click to show the marking menu. What we're going to do is use the Connect Components tool, and you'll see that I use this a lot throughout this course. Open its options. If I click Apply, it simply adds an edge loop down the middle of each of the selected edges. The problem is, this area is still quite flat. If I undo that, and this time enable Insert with Edge Flow. The edge loop is added but maintains the curvature of the model, so this is a better option for us here. Okay, that's one loop added. Let's create another one down the other side, over here. So now we have those extra loops, let's remove some of the faces. Roughly where the sphere is. Something like this. And we can now also remove the back of the sphere. So delete this loop here, then select a face and holding Control, right-click and select To Shell to quickly select the remaining polygons. And delete those. When referring to the shell, what this means is just a single area, which this was because it was no longer connected to the front of the sphere. With all that done, we can now start to connect the sphere. What we want to do is weld the vertices to the closest point on the cylinder. What we could do is select a vertex, and then hold V, which will allow us to snap it to another vertex. The problem is we would then need to weld this separately because we still have two vertices here. They're just sitting in the same place. A quicker approach would be to use the Target Weld tool. With this tool, all we do is select a vertex, and then its target. And then it's moved and welded for us. Let's weld the top of the sphere to this vertex here, this one here, where next? The one at the bottom here. So it's looking like we need another edge loop around the torso here, so let's add one. Another option instead of using Connect Component is to use the Insert Edge Loop tool. This is a bit more interactive if you want a bit more control over your edge loop placement. For me, I find the Connect Component tool a bit quicker to work with. Okay, now we have that extra edge loop, we can continue welding. So this one at the side can be welded here. We could try welding here. No, that doesn't work. You will see with this sort of modelling that most of the time it's trial and error. Try something, see if it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, let's come back to this. We can do some cleanup first. So up here, we can weld these back into the middle. And I realise we added these in earlier, but it's important that you optimise as you go. The fewer edge loops in your model, the better it will look and perform. Let's try down here. No, that doesn't look even enough. What if we select this edge and delete it instead? I'm using the Delete Edge tool instead of just pressing Delete, because that will also remove the vertices too. No, that still doesn't look right. Okay, let's select this edge ring instead, and go to Merge Collapse Edges, and then collapse the edges. This will bring the vertices on either side of an edge into the middle. That looks better, it's more evenly spaced here now. Okay, let's fill this hole here too. We can try it here too. Now this won't work because we have this single vertex on the inside here. The other side needs a polygon before we can fill it in. So let's go back to this area here. Let's move this edge loop down. If I hold Ctrl and Shift, this will allow me to slide the edge, which simply moves it over the model's surface. Now let's snap this vertex to here, now it's closer. So hold V, and now we need to weld these, so select them both. Hold Shift, right click and go to Merge Vertices to Center. Even though those are welded, we still can't use the Fill tool because of the open triangle on the other side. So instead, select an edge, and holding Shift, extrude it to create an extra face. Another option would be to bring up the marking menu and use the Extrude Edge tool. I find the interactive one much quicker for this though. So extrude a new face. Now collapse the outer edge to give us a triangle. Let's repeat that for the opposite side. And now we can simply use the Target Weld tool to weld these points to the vertex at the bottom of the sphere. So that's an alternative option for when the Fill tool refuses to work. So that's the sphere seamlessly welded to the torso now, but we do have a few triangles. We can quickly turn these here into quads though. Select the three edges beneath them and insert an edge loop. Just use the Connect Components tool for now, as it's quicker. Now collapse the edges on either side, like this. So what we have now are 4 triangles. But we can now delete those inner edges to turn these into quads. And that also gives us a nice loop all around the torso. So we have another triangle up here too. This looks like a triangle, but it is in fact a quad. So let's adjust this to make it more obvious. What we can do with this triangle here, let's move these in and add another edge loop down here. I can triangulate this face now to give us 2 triangles. So I want this to point in towards the other triangle. I can hold Ctrl and Alt and use the arrow keys to quickly flip the edge. I can now delete this outer edge here, and then this one to turn these 2 triangles into a quad. To be fair though, this area is going to change as we attach the arm, so let's do that next. First combine the models, and now remove some of the polygons from the top of the torso, where the arm intersects. Let's move these out so we can see what we are working with. Looking from the front, we can see we need to also remove some of the arm geometry too. Okay, now we can start welding. These vertices are close, so let's select those. And go to Merge Vertices to Center to pull those into the middle. Let's weld these as well. A quad would fill this area nicely. Select the outer edges, and this time use the Bridge tool. This will quickly bridge this gap for us. There's so much more you can do with the Bridge tool, it's worth experimenting with. But for now, we just really want a basic bridge. Okay, let's weld these next. Actually, I'll do it the other way. We can use the Bridge tool again to fill this area here. But that gives us a triangle now. So let's add an edge loop through the quad we just created. Triangulate it. Flip the new edge and delete this triangle here. We can also delete this edge now too. And finally use the Bridge tool to fill this gap. Let's move back to the front now and do some adjustments. Just move these. Actually, for this type of work, it's better to use the Tweak tool. To enable it, hold Ctrl and Shift, and then right-click on the model. Now select Tweak mode. What this will allow you to do is move the components without having to click twice on each of them. You see, I can now simply select and move. It's a much quicker way to work. So I'm just evening out the topology a little. Okay, So let's now add an edge loop here. And also extrude the shoulder geometry up too, so we can continue this around the front of the model. We need to fill out the front of the shoulder now. So extrude these edges up too, and let's weld these to connect them. Okay, let's fix the back of the shoulder now, so this flows a little better. So maybe we add an edge loop up here, and now triangulate the polygons below. I can flip this edge now, and delete the ones either side to convert this to two quads. And now weld those vertices. Okay, good. It's probably about time we deleted the history. It's been slowly building up. With this model, we do need to keep in mind that it's going to be a subdivision surface mesh, so it will ultimately be smoothed. Let's see how it compares now. All I need to do is press 3, and you see the model looks a lot smoother now. I can press 3 again to disable it, and we can go back to the original proxy mesh. We can also enable it in the attribute editor too, under the Smooth Mesh tab. And down here you can control how many subdivisions are added. The higher the number, the smoother the model, but this will also have an impact on the performance too. It's a good idea to enable this from time to time as you work, so you get a clearer idea of how the final smoothed model will look. So let's tackle this triangle up here. We can turn this into a quad and route the edge loop towards the middle of the model. So create a new edge loop above it, collapse that edge at one end, just above the triangle, and finally delete the triangle in the middle. That's now a quad. Let's delete these faces from up here for now. Okay, so that's the chest and arm connected to the torso. Let's take a look at the leg now. So first combine the models and delete the history. Let's take a look at how we can connect these. Okay, we can probably start from the inside. So let's move this vertex down, and we can weld it to the torso here. We have more topology in the torso compared to the leg, so let's add an edge loop here. And also one at the other side too. We can use those now to connect to the torso. Let's adjust these. Okay, now we need to remove these polygons here. And let's look at what vertices are close to each other. So we can weld these. And also these. Which means we can delete these triangles now too. Okay, we can weld this now, and also this to close those. What I'm going to do is delete the opposite side of the torso. We don't need it at this stage because we will eventually mirror the model. Okay, let's fill out the hip. So we need some more geometry, so let's extrude these edges here. We want the topology here to match the torso, so let's add 2 more edge loops. And try welding the vertices now. Actually, I'm not sure that's going to work. Okay, let's undo that. Instead, let's delete these from the torso model and bridge the polygons starting at the middle and the outside. We can now fill this hole. Bridge this, and again fill this hole. Oh, and fill this hole in the front. If I enable Smooth Mesh again, we can see we have this obvious shelf here. So let's adjust these vertices, moving them up, and these down. And what I'm going to do now is reroute the edge flow here, So let's collapse the edges at the front, here, and at the back. Create a new edge loop at the front, collapse the edge here, and then delete the triangle in the middle here to convert this to a quad, and repeat that on the rear. We do have two triangles, but let's adjust the shape first. So we ideally want the edges to follow this natural crease here. Let's quickly remove the triangles for now. We can add an edge loop between them, which does feel like we are stepping backwards. Okay, quick cleanup. So delete the history, and let's soften the edges too. As a last step in this video, let's look at the overall distribution of edges. As you can see, they aren't evenly spaced, which could cause issues later as we try to add more detail. Now we can quickly solve this using Maya's sculpting tools, in particular the Relax tool. What this will do is spread out the vertices across the surface of the model, evening them out. And it does this all while trying to maintain the overall shape of the model. You see, that's much better. So with this course, I really want to try and keep each video around the half-an-hour mark where possible. And it looks like we've already gone over that at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this video here, and we're just going to pick things up in video 4. Okay, that's another video over. Thanks for watching right to the end, and make sure you also check out some of the other free videos and courses that I have. You can find links to all these on the screen now and in the description below. Remember, to help support future content and keep these videos free, visit the antCGi store or join the antCGi club. Alternatively, if you would just like to show your appreciation for these videos, why not treat me to a coffee at my coffee page? Again, the link is on the screen now and in the description below. Thanks again for watching. This is antCGi signing off, and I will see you on the next one.